Previously on Unscripted.
So do you want to know, like, the top songs from the Billboard Hot 100 in 1979? YMCA by the Village People.
Oh, another vinyl that I own, by the way.
I'm sure I had the 8-track.
8-track, oh boy.
You're listening to Unscripted with Skip Sherman and Josh Obadia.
Okay, Skip, so this is my favorite episode of the year. It's the best of the year, so best of 2023. For those who haven't heard this episode before, what we do at the end of the year is we give out awards. I think the first time we did this, we gave out 8 awards. I think it's now increased to 9 or 10 awards. I'm not sure how many. We keep adding new awards every year. And then what we're doing this year differently is because we both talk too much and this episode is usually very long, we're splitting it up into part 1 and part 2. So this week is part 1 and next week is part 2. And we're splitting it up with one week is going to be sports awards and the other week is going to be entertainment awards. So that's what this episode is. Did you have anything you want to say about this episode before we get into it?
Well, so good introduction. Love it. Today we're going to do, like you said, the entertainment awards. So we're going to talk about our favorite TV shows, favorite movie, song, and concert, and then any other things that you want to bring up that was your favorite part of the world of, pop culture and entertainment this year. And next week we'll do sports. I'm really looking forward to this. I've been keeping track all year because we always have trouble remembering everything from the year. Like, it's always such a, you have to go back and like, what did I watch this year? So I actually kept a list of every single thing I watched this year. Every movie and every TV show, I kept a list of everything I've watched. So I could easily look back and say, oh yeah, that was this year,
I did the same thing. I kept track because there's no way I could remember what happened 11 months ago. I don't even remember what happened 11 days ago. So even though we've done this for several years now, I always have trouble understanding the definitions of the awards, and I ask you the same question every year. Mm-hmm. For example, like, we're going to do this next week, but like best play of the year or best player of the year, whichever one it is it the best or is it my favorite?
Right.
So,
well, I mean, you know how we roll, right? Our show, our rules. So I think we've loosened the definition over the years, and we've settled on favorite as the, because that's what we do every episode is our favorite. When we're telling you about the songs of 1979, I'm not saying this is the best song of 1979. It's my favorite, right? So we're going to do the same thing here.
Okay, yeah, that's how I did it too. Anyway, before we get into that, we're still going to do listener mail because our crack research team has told us that listener mail is our listeners' favorite part of our episodes. So we don't want to leave that out. So take it away with listener mail.
Mailbag.
Stephanie from Montreal. She actually, this is regarding the last episode, which is what I just mentioned before, songs from 1979. She said, I've not listened to the episode yet, but here are my top picks. So actually, she kind of gave us her list blind without hearing ours. The Gambler, Kenny Rogers, Hold the Line, Toto, Don't Bring Me Flowers, Neil Diamond and Barbra Streisand, Babe by Styx, London Calling the Clash, I Want You to Want Me, Cheap Trick, Don't Stop Me Now, Queen, and she mentioned some honorable mentions, Video Killed the Radio Star, I Don't Like Mondays, which are songs, that actually we did mention. So that's kind of cool.
Great. Thanks, Stephanie.
Derek from Montreal, just stopping by to say Born to Be Alive by Patrick Hernandez. And I always thought ELO was singing Ruth, Don't Bring Me Down. And of course, this was the same band who sang about an illegal woman, right? So he's trying to make a joke there. The song Evil Woman. So
yes.
Apparently ELO also, has some people misinterpreting their lyric. Instead of evil woman, it's illegal woman, which actually, I could kind of see that, actually. I could hear that in my ear right now.
So can I, actually, yeah.
Yeah. Jason from Montreal, no word of a lie. My favorite Dire Straits song is Portobello Bell. And if not for the very same CD compilation you spoke of, I probably not even know the song. Awesome, Jason. I loved reading that note. It really, really gave me good feelings right there.
Our listeners send good mail.
Good mail. Lenny, again, my uncle, mentioned he loved our picks, and he mentioned the song because I talked about Dire Straits, and he said, "What about Sultans of Swing?" And of course, I mean, it's one of the greatest Dire Straits song. Everybody knows it. I didn't include it on purpose last time because it's kind of one of those where it came out in 78, even though it was popular in 79. So depending on how how I set my own rules, it could or could not be on the list. So that's why I didn't mention it last time. Mark from Philadelphia, not about the songs from 1979, talking about crazy sports rules, that things that could, not rules, but things that could change in sports that would enhance the games, right? Mm-hmm. That was a few episodes ago.
Yeah. He
sent me this picture, and I'll have to post it because it'll help you understand, but if NFL fields were different shapes like holes on golf courses, as long as they're 100 yards down the center, you could have to get Hail Marys over trees or kicks that need to draw or fade over water. And he didn't invent this. He sent me a picture of someone. But you could, like when they show you the overhead of like a golf hole and it starts off straight and then it curves to the right or it curves to the left and there's trees. Imagine if that was a football field and you had to like actually go that way.
That would make it interesting, yes.
Yeah, so thank you, Mark, for that one. I do have to give my own correction from last week. I feel bad about the Buggles' Video Killed the Radio Star, because when you mentioned the song, I kind of like disparaged the song and basically, I didn't say it was outright trash, but I was kind of like, really? That song, like that's the best? Like that's your favorite? But every episode we put in the song. When I edit the episodes, I put in little sound clips of each song that we mentioned. So I had to like download the Buggles Video Killed the Radio Star MP3 and then figure out which part I was going to put into the episode. So I actually had to listen to the song to figure out that. And then as I listened to the song, I realized I owe the Buggles a huge apology because this is a great song. It's really, really a great song. And I think I've listened to it like 20 times. Like I listened to it so many times since we last recorded. I really, really actually never realized how great of a song it is. It's really actually quite good. So that's the Buggles.
I'm glad you came to your senses.
And then I actually asked ChatGPT, instead of asking ChatGPT about like the best songs of 79, I asked it to sort of like make my conscience feel better. I asked, is Video Killed the Radio Star by the Buggles a good song?
Did it say yes or no?
Well, no, it doesn't like to give opinions. It said, Video Killed the Radio Star by the Buggles is generally considered a classic and influential song. Released in 1979, it's famous for being the first music video ever played on MTV when the network launched in 1981. The song has a catchy melody, and its lyrics reflect the impact of technology on the music industry. And it goes on and on and on, basically saying that like whether it's good or not is subjective and it depends on individual taste, but it does hold a special place in music history.
Excellent. Okay. We'll be right back after this to give out our 2023 Entertainment Awards.
You're listening to Unscripted.
Are you taking a month-long vacation in the stratosphere and you know how hard it is to hold your breath? Are you the cosmic kid in full costume dress? You've got a nice little place in the podcast universe with Set Listing Bruce. Set Listing Bruce is your podcast for all things Bruce Springsteen fandom. We discuss his music, we talk about his tour, and we also talk to fans of other musicians and share their story of their passion, their fandom, and the way that their favorite artist music makes them feel. Set Listing Bruce, a Bruce Springsteen fan podcast, is available wherever you find podcasts. Remember, there is magic in the night.
And now, back to Unscripted.
Okay, Skip, we're back.
All right, so we're going to start right into our awards. We're going to get going with the first one, which is our favorite movie of the year. Now, this could be a movie that you saw on TV, on a streaming, on wherever, or maybe if you went to the movie theater. I don't know. Did you go to the movie theater this year? I did a few times.
I went once, and I'm actually going again next week, but the movie I see next week will have to count for next year. But let me just clarify one thing about all the awards. The movie or the song or the TV show or whatever it is didn't have to happen in 2023. It could have happened 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 years ago. If I watched it in 2023, it counts.
Yeah, I agree. If you watch it in 2023, it counts. Although I try to weigh my own scale a little bit heavily towards if it's more recent, right? Like, I don't want to go and tell you that my favorite song of the year is, from a song that I rediscovered from 1987, and that I happened to listen to. I try to get more recent stuff. Same thing with the movies and the TV. But let's see where we are. So, I mean, it's a little bit anticlimactic for me because a lot of these awards, I've talked about these shows and movies and different things during the year. So people may already know what my favorite movie is because I raved about it already. And that's Barbie. Now I know people are going to say, Barbie's your favorite movie of the year? Yes, Barbie is my favorite movie of the year. I did see a bunch of movies in the theater this year. Like a lot of people in the world, I fell into the Barbenheimer situation where I saw Barbie and Oppenheimer, in the same week. I also saw Mission Impossible the week before that. And then I saw a lot of great movies on TV this year as well. Flora and Son is one that you should watch on Apple TV. I highly recommend. But Barbie is number one. It's like, what makes a great movie? First of all, it's a comedy, right? Is it funny? It's hilarious. Is it well written? It's amazing. The humor, the writing is like, it's at its next level. Is it beautiful to look at? They've created a whole universe of pink Barbie stuff. Like, it's absolutely amazing. Does it have a good message? Feminism, empowering women. Like, it's got like so many great aspects. And I just thought it's so fun to watch that I had to make it my number one movie.
Okay, well, that's a great pick.
Yeah,
before I tell you mine, I just want to say that in general, the last few years, TV shows have been much better than movies, I find.
100%.
So to find like my favorite movie of the year was not as easy as my favorite TV show of the year.
Right.
That said, I think you know a little bit about me. You know that I like movies, a certain type of movie where like it's real. I don't like sci-fi. You know that already about me. I don't like flying monkeys or whatever, So
okay.
So actually, I have like my top 3 movies of the year, and they all have something in common. They're all based on a true story.
I love true stories.
So, for example, like Air is in my list, not number one.
Yeah.
Blackberry in my list, not number one.
Is that good?
The movie was good, yes. I don't know how much of these movies are true, like how accurate they are, because like, Hollywood, they always embellish things. But my favorite movie of the year was Tetris. I didn't see it at the theater.
Are you kidding? Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not kidding you. I didn't see it at the theater. It wasn't at the theater. I saw it on Apple TV Plus. It was released in March. It was actually premiered at the South by Southwest Film Festival in March. It's got good reviews from the critics.
Yeah.
So just to tell you a little bit, because I didn't know any of this about the game Tetris when I was playing the game Tetris. So it came out in the late 80s, the game, which I thought actually it was after that. I didn't realize it came out such a long time ago, because I don't remember playing Tetris in the 80s. But it was invented by a guy in Russia, and he wasn't even allowed to profit from the game. The company that he worked for was allowed to profit from the game, but not him himself.
Not really so much a company, more like a Soviet organization, like a part of the government.
Correct. Yes, exactly. And so anyway, this American guy wanted to bring the game, to North America, and he thought he had purchased the rights. Like, he did purchase the rights from like a middleman, but turns out the middleman didn't have the rights to sell him the rights. So then he couldn't release the game. So then he wants to talk to this guy in Russia, but of course he can't get a hold of him. So he decides to just book a flight and fly to Russia. But you couldn't just do that in those days, So as soon as he lands in Russia, like, there's people watching him, following him, like, where's he going? Who's he talking to? And he gets to talk to the inventor of the game, who wants nothing to do with him. Like, because he's afraid that something's going to happen to him if he talks to this American guy. And sure enough, something did happen to him.
Right.
But
I watched the movie after you mentioned it. I watched the movie the week after you mentioned it, like a few episodes ago.
Okay. So, yeah, anyway, they end up becoming friends because they're both programmers and they have a lot in common. And I'm not going to, spoil it for all the listeners, but I found it to be a really good movie. The trailer is weird because when you watch the trailer, you can't tell, is this real or is it a comedy? But the movie was actually good.
Actually, the trailer gives the right impression of the movie because I don't know if it's a drama or a comedy. Like it's kind of both. It's like it's a drama, but it's so weird like that you kind of have to laugh at parts because it's like the absurdity of some of the situations. And then I'm sure it's heavily embellished. Like when they say based on a true story, we're talking about based on a true story. Like there's no way that like there's this Argo like race to the airport to see if he gets on the plane and if the Soviet Secret Service, the KGB is going to stop him. Like it's really like, I'm sure it's like heavily like exaggerated, don't you think? Or
I agree with you, although I did some research afterwards to try to find out like what's real and what's not. It was hard to find out any information.
Yeah.
By the way, you mentioned Argo. That's another movie I really like.
Yeah, but I mean, did you watch it this year?
No, not this year. But I'm just saying, if we had done this show when Argo came out, that would have probably been my favorite movie that year.
Yeah, probably.
Okay,
all right, well, good pick. Good pick. Tetris is an entertaining movie. It's an entertaining movie to watch.
Plus, I mean, it's really the only video game I ever liked.
That's funny.
Okay, so what's next on our list?
Song of the Year.
Okay.
Always a highly contentious topic because most times I've never heard of the song that you're going to pick. Like probably you're going to name a song and an artist and I'm going to be like, okay, what? I never heard of that. I don't know. So it's always a little bit educational for me. And then usually like, every year, whenever you've picked your song of the year, I've gone and listened to the song and I always like it, but it's just like, I just never heard of them before. So it's always a little bit strange.
So I'll go first because you went first for the last category.
Sure.
And I've narrowed it down to two. Well, I picked my number one, but my number two is Blame Brett by The Beaches. I won't talk about it because it's number two. Number one is a song that actually came out in 2022. I only heard it for the first time in 2023, and it's called Burning by the Yeah Yeah Yeahs.
I've heard of the Yeah Yeah Yeahs, I think because of you. Or maybe not, I don't know. But yeah, that they ring a bell, but I don't think I know the song. But anyways.
So anyway, they're an American indie rock band from New York. And interestingly enough, their record label, the name of their record label is called Secretly Canadian.
Oh.
Which is an American company, but they're called Secretly Canadian.
So they're secret. They don't want people to know.
Now, the band has released...
Even though it's in the title.
Right. The band has actually released 5 albums, but between number 4 and number 5, there was almost a decade.
That's why I think I know the Yeah Yeah Yeahs from a long time ago, no?
It's possible.
Yeah.
So this song, Burning, the lead singer, her name is Karen O, and she says that it contains a little lyrical nod to Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons song Beggin', which I'm sure you've heard. You might not recognize it by title, but if you...
No, I know exactly the song.
Yeah. So, and also she goes on to say, if the world is on fire, I hope the most beloved stay protected and that we do all we can to protect what we cherish most in life. Burning is a song about that feeling, smoke signals for the soul. Begging to cool it down, just doing it the best we know how.
Sounds good, Josh.
I really like the song. As soon as I heard it, I think in early 2023, I really liked it. In fact, the Yeah Yeah Yeahs were supposed to be the musical guest on Saturday Night Live early in the year, and I think the lead singer or someone in the band got sick, so they couldn't do their Saturday Night Live gig, and I'm hoping that they eventually are the musical guest on the show at some point.
So, Song of the Year for me, it's always pretty difficult. You're not on social media so much, so maybe you don't even know what I'm talking about. But like people post their Spotify Wrapped. Do you know what this is?
No.
So it's like Spotify keeps track of everything that you've listened to all year, and it tells you, you've listened to this much of this, you listened to this. This is the song you listen to the most. This is the album you listen to the most. This is the artist you listen to the most. So Apple Music does the same thing. They call it replay. So like I can go and look at my replay of 2023, and I can see like it tells me you listened to this, and you tell me you listened to that. So like the top artists that I listened to in 2023 were Bruce Springsteen, Taylor Swift, Blue Rodeo, David Bowie, and number 5 was the artist who has the song of the year that I'm about to mention, which is Noah Kahan. Although people say Khan, although it's spelled Kahan, so I'm not really sure how to say it. But Noah K had an album that came out in 2022 called Season of the Stick, and this album contains a song called Stick Season, which is my number 1 song of 2023.
Vermont, but it's the season of the sticks, and I saw your mom, she forgot that I existed, and it's half my fault, but I just like to play the victim. I'll drink alcohol till my friends come home for Christmas, and
I discovered him kind of by accident. Like I scrolled through something on like Instagram and I saw a song and I was like, what is this? And then I asked my daughter, have you heard of this artist? She's like, yeah, he's super popular. I'm like, really? And then I asked you if you heard of him and you're like, yeah, he sings that song Dial Drunk. Like you knew about him. Like I was like, oh, okay. So I listened to the song Stick Season 700 million times. Like I overplayed it. I listened to his whole album. It's actually quite brilliant. I just think Stick Season is a great song and really like will represent like my 2023 listening. It's like really what I listened to this year. You know, it's for a song that's not by Bruce Springsteen to make it as my number 1 song this year is huge because I listened to Bruce Springsteen from probably 6 months of the year, like pretty much uninterrupted, you know, like because you recall, like, I don't want to give away like the best concert, which is the next category, but I went to see Springsteen in concert in April. And so that's all I listened to for like 5-6 months, you know? And then of course, new music eventually did come and other artists and, you know, so that's my number 1 song of the year, Stick Season by Noah Kahan.
Yeah. So Noah Kahan is interesting because, somehow it sounds like a kind of little country music to me, but yet they play his stuff on the alternative radio station that I listen to. And the other thing that's interesting is for some reason I keep seeing commercials on television for his album. You don't really see many commercials on television for albums, but they spent a lot of money on marketing for this particular album. I don't know why. So you can't get away from this guy. Even if you wanted to get away, you can't because he's everywhere.
He really is, actually, because the other song that I mentioned, Dial Drunk, he sings it with Post Malone, maybe? I forget.
Yes, you're right.
Right? So it's like it's really popular, you know, among younger people than us, you know? So, and, you know, I just want to give an honorable mention because he has another song that he came out with, a duet with, you know, how much I love Casey Musgraves. So he did a duet with Casey Musgraves on a song called She Calls Me Back, which is also absolutely incredible. Could have been my number 1 as well, but Stick Season is really like the one, you know, for this year. So
awesome. Okay, so next we're doing concert, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I already spoiled my pick, so
go ahead.
I mean, so I didn't see that much live music this year. I think I only went to 2 concerts, so like 50-50, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I did see Blue Rodeo this year as well. I mean, actually, that was a great concert. But on April 14th of this year, I went to see Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band in Newark, New Jersey. Like, you can't get better than that. Like, that's it. I just have to tell you what it was and where I saw it, and then you're like, okay, well, that's number 1. So, I mean, it actually blew my mind. I came home and I was like, that was the religious experience. It was everything I hoped it would be. The concert was everything I wanted it to be and more. It was just an incredible day, like being there with all the fans in New Jersey and the concert. And I mean, I don't know like what more I can say other than that. Like, that's like the best moment for me of the year was that show, right? That was it, you know, like, you know, I was supposed to go see him again this year. I would have had a second Springsteen concert, which was supposed to have been November 20th. But as you know, like he postponed all his 2023 fall shows, and they are actually all postponed till 2024. So that Montreal concert's not till October 31st, Halloween of 2024, which is pretty crazy. Like, we have to wait a whole year from the time, you know, it was supposed to have been. And then it's actually even longer from the time I actually bought the tickets. It's like pretty insane. So, yeah, Bruce Springsteen and E Street Band, Newark, New Jersey, number 1 concert of the year.
So when we do this episode next year, he could be your favorite concert again because you're going to see him again. And if that's your only concert next year, then there's your favorite of 2024.
Concert's going to be, like I said, October 31st, which is going to be like really close to the time we're going to record the best of the year episode next year. So it's like the recency bias is going to be huge. Like it's yeah, great prediction already.
So I saw 4 concerts this year. The Madding Crowd, Crowded House, Blue Rodeo, and my favorite concert was The Beaches. So I've talked about The Beaches many times on this show. They're a Toronto band, 4 women. They were formed in 2013, so they've been around for 10 years, and they've got a few albums out. They sold out 2 shows at Massey Hall in Toronto. You don't know Massey Hall, but it could be the best concert venue in Toronto because it's intimate, the sound, the acoustics are great. And for them to sell out 2 shows in 2 nights at Massey Hall is a big deal for them. And it was a great concert, a lot of energy. And I said to my friend who I went with right after the concert, like, you could tell that this band is going to be big. Well, they're already big to me, but I said to my friend, the next time they play live in Toronto, it's going to be at a bigger venue and it won't be as good. And sure enough, a few weeks later, they announced that they're playing in Toronto in the summer at Budweiser Stage, which is an outdoor venue, but it's much bigger. And I hope they sell it out as well. I don't know. Maybe I'll go, maybe I won't. But this concert was great. Funny story, the most recent single that they've released, it's called Blame Brett. And it's basically Jordan Miller, the lead singer. It's about her ex. The whole song is about her ex. And funny enough, when the band played a concert in Hamilton a couple of months ago, her ex, Brett, was in the audience.
Sounds good. I mean, you mentioned them a lot, so obviously you really do like them. It's not the first time you've mentioned the Beaches, so good pick. All right, we're heading to the granddaddy of them all, top TV show. I mean, TV viewing is something that we talk about probably in every episode or almost every episode. You know, either at the beginning of the episode, you mention, hey, this is what I've been watching. Have you watched this? Or at the end of the episode in our final thoughts, we talk about, hey, we give recommendations. This is really good, or things that you like that you've watched, or, we just catch up on what we're watching on TV because TV's become such an important, it's kind of our biggest form of entertainment. And like you said, like, with the advent of streaming, like, TV became really good. We're not talking about, network TV shows where, there's 26 episodes a year. We're talking about limited series, sometimes 6 episodes, 8, 10, these are series that are kind of have become part of really a big part of the pop culture, of our whole society. So, I mean, I wrote down every show I watched this year, every one.
I did too.
I'm going to tell you my top 5, but I'm going to tell you, like, I have actually 14 that I wrote down that I wanted to at least give honorable mentions to.
Wow.
To the ones who didn't make the top 5. So, like, 6 through 14, I'll tell you, like, just shows that I watched this year that I really liked. Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Mrs. Maisel, all of it. I mean, we did a whole episode on Mrs. Maisel, so, like, I mean, the final season did come out this year, but I actually watched the whole series this whole year in 2023, which is amazing. The Lincoln Lawyer on Netflix, fabulous show. Shrinking on Apple TV, also fabulous. The Bear, something that we talked about a little bit, that's on Disney Plus here in Canada. It's quite entertaining. The Crowded Room, I think it's on Netflix, was actually a kind of good psychological thriller. I would be remiss to not mention any Star Wars shows this year. So Ahsoka was absolutely amazing, especially like for big fans. It was really like it was great. Bad Sisters on Apple TV, and then the show that I actually watched the most this whole year, like I watched it probably like, I don't know, more than 150 episodes of it at least. I don't know how many they come out within a year, is Jeopardy. I watch it every single day.
Jeopardy.
No, but like we're talking about TV shows,
no,
so
I
it's
know,
only
but I was
fair.
like, when you said 150 episodes, I'm like, what show has 150 episodes?
Yeah. I mean, like, Jeopardy is something that I watch every single day, and I don't miss it. I never miss an episode, and so I do feel like I have to mention it, so do love Jeopardy. So I'm going to give you my top 5 shows. Number 5, Lessons in Chemistry. This is something that I would just watch recently. It's on Apple TV Plus. It stars Brie Larson. It's about woman scientist in the 1950s. Who's trying to, it's about her life basically and how difficult it is for her to get her work recognized, and then basically the twists and turns of her life that leads her into other things, family, and it's just the twists and turns of this one woman's life in the 1950s and her experience. Bosch Legacy, which is an Amazon Prime show, you kind of have to watch all of the Bosch stuff to you can't just jump into Bosch Legacy and hope to know what the hell's going on. But Bosch Legacy was a really great and super entertaining. Mrs. Davis, which I believe is on Crave here in Canada. I don't know where it is in the United States. I watched this way earlier in the year. I had to remind myself, did I actually watch this in 2023? But I know I mentioned it to you. I mentioned it to you way back when. Mrs. Davis is a freaking weird show. When I told my wife that it was in my top 5, she couldn't believe it. It stars Betty Gilpin as a nun who's trying to destroy this AI that's taken over the entire world. I can't even explain it. If I try to explain it, you're going to just think it's stupid. And even if you watch the show, you may hate it, but I actually loved it because it was actually incredibly original. Number 2 show that I watched this year is Apple TV show called Silo. That's with Rebecca Ferguson. It's a science fiction dystopian kind of world where the humans left on Earth after a huge nuclear war are living underground in a silo. Really great show, and I'm happy that there's going to be a season 2. I'm pretty sure there's going to be a season 2. And then, Josh, number 1. I don't think it's any surprise to anybody listening, you included, what my number 1 show of the year is. I raved about it the entire year. We did a whole episode about it. I could talk about it for ever and ever and ever and ever, and that's Ted Lasso. The final season of Ted Lasso was absolutely incredible. I enjoyed every minute of it. The last 2 or 3 episodes specifically are absolutely just an emotional roller coaster of ups and downs. And, Ted Lasso is the show that just gives you all the feelings. It's the most heartwarming, funny, it's got the best message. It's really trying to get the whole idea of is let's be the best of ourselves. Let's be good to people. Let's be the best we can be, So Ted Lasso is my number 1 show of the year. There's no doubt about that.
Okay, awesome. So I'm not surprised by your number 1, and I'm not surprised about most of your honorable mentions. I am surprised. I don't think in any of your honorable mentions you mentioned my favorite show. So similar to you, I'll do my honorable mentions. Ted Lasso's in my honorable mentions. The Shrink Next Door, which is an Apple show. The Bear, which I'm in the middle of season 2. Hijack, also an Apple show, reminds me a lot of 24. Shrinking, also an Apple show. Severance, yet another Apple show, which I'm surprised that I liked that one, but I actually did. And then we get into my top 5. So number 5, again, this is from a few years ago. The show is called Kevin Can F*** Himself, and it was originally on AMC, but now I think you can watch it on Amazon. There's only 2 seasons of it. It's a weird show because it's like a sitcom, but yet it's a serious show. I can't really explain it. You have to watch 1 episode and you'll understand. Next is Fleischman is in Trouble, which is Jesse Eisenberg and Claire Danes, and that's on Disney, I believe. Number 3 is The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. This was my favorite show of the year a few years ago. That's on Amazon. An excellent show. I recommend that everyone watch it from the beginning.
Yeah. The final season was very satisfying. The ending of the show, I really... we did a whole episode of Mrs. Maisel. You can hear our in-depth thoughts about it, but I really enjoyed the way they finished it,
Right. And number 2 is a show called Casual, which I mentioned to you. In Canada, you can see it on Gem. In the States, I think it's on Hulu. Also, this show, I think, is 5 years old. I only discovered it this year. It's... When you look at the description, it says it's a comedy. And yes, there are some funny parts, but I don't really consider it a comedy. Even though it's a 30-minute show, To me, it's more of a drama. But anyway, if you watch it, you'll see what I mean. So number one for me, and this was difficult, but because actually any of those top 5 really could have been my number one show. It was that close. But for number one, I picked The White Lotus, the HBO show. So I don't think you mentioned it in your honorable mentions, but you told me about The White Lotus. And it's an HBO show, which in Canada we can watch on Crave because we don't get HBO. So there's been 2 seasons of The White Lotus, and they really have, it's not a continuing show where it's the same characters. Although there was one character, I think her name is Jennifer Coolidge.
That's the actress, yeah.
Right. Who's in both seasons. It's about this made-up resort where people go for a week and they have a great time. And, from day one that they're there, things start to get progressively eerie, if you will. Like, what's going to happen? Because they always show you the first scene of the first episode is like, someone's dead.
Yeah, exactly.
They flash forward to the end, someone's dead, and then you have to figure out the whole, 7 or 8 or 9 episodes, who it is and how it happens. So I found it very entertaining. Also, like, this is the opposite of casual because this is not listed as a comedy, although I guess they call it a dark comedy drama. I was laughing out loud for some parts of season 2. I was laughing out loud, so I really liked it. So this was on, the first season I think was in 2021. The second season was in 2022. And I heard there will be a third season, which is not happening until 2025. And there will be one character or one actress that is coming back. And her name is Natasha Rothwell. So she's going to reprise her role as Belinda from the first season. Anyhow, so these are all rumors. So I don't know if actually this is going to happen. But, everyone was talking about this show this past year, at least, I don't know, people who I interact with. So a lot of people, I guess, didn't discover it until 2023.
Well, I didn't include it in my list because I watched it in 2020. I mean, I watched season 1 when it came out, and then I watched season 2 right at the end of 2022 in December. We did a whole episode on The White Lotus in January of 2023. It was one of the first episodes we did this year. So you must have just watched it at the beginning of 2023. I'm pretty sure.
I did.
Yeah.
So that's my favorite show of the year.
It's great. Like, I have nothing bad to say about The White Lotus. The White Lotus is great. I mean, it's just that I didn't watch it this year. I'm looking forward to season 3. I hope it's going to be good because it's got a lot to live up to.
Right. I'm a little concerned because now that it's gained so much notoriety, there's all these expectations, and sometimes it's like when you dip a chip, you dip once and you end it. Sometimes a show, even though it's great, you shouldn't make another season.
Good pick, Josh. So I do have a kind of rogue category.
Okay.
I don't know if you have any, but I wanted to shout out some podcasts that I listened to this year since, we are a podcast. In the category of sports podcast, I mean, the one that I listened to the most was New Heights, which is the Jason Kelce, Travis Kelce podcast. Like, is there a luckier set of circumstances in the world than this? Like, they started their podcast last year, and then they met in the Super Bowl. Like, they can't plan this. You know what I mean? Like, they can't plan it. And then it just so happened both teams had this crazy year, and then they met in the Super Bowl, the brothers, the whole thing. And then they're like, okay, what do you do for an encore? Right? How do you top that? Okay, well, Travis starts dating Taylor Swift. Like it's just mental. Like that it like got to this this situation, So the podcast is really entertaining, and the fact that he's dating Taylor Swift comes up often, although he's a little bit shy about it. He doesn't like to talk about it. It's still a very entertaining podcast. In the category of, indie podcasts, I would be remiss without mentioning our good friend Jesse Jackson, who runs the Set Lusting Bruce podcast, a Springsteen fan podcast. You don't have to be a Springsteen fan to listen to that show. If you're a fan of any kind of music, just dive right into it. It's incredibly enjoyable. Jesse's the hardest working man in podcasting. It's absolutely incredible. The number of episodes he puts out every week. Like, I still don't understand how it's possible. If you want to listen to a great fiction podcast, scripted drama, Case 63 Season 2, I mentioned Case 63 Season 1 maybe a couple of years ago. It's highly entertaining, although, I mean, it's a kind of an acquired taste. You kind of really have to like it. And then I just started listening to a new podcast this week, and I had to talk about it. It's called Who Killed JFK? And it's made by Rob Reiner, the famous actor, writer, producer. He is the one that's the narrator and did all the research of this podcast. And it's basically going back 60 years and talking about, like, he's trying to get to the bottom of, like, really who killed JFK. It's really, really fascinating. It's incredible how much Rob Reiner knows about this stuff. Like, I couldn't believe it. It's obviously kind of very important and passionate subject for him. It's something that he's researched his whole life that finally he's decided to put it all out there. It's really, really kind of good. So that's that. That's podcasts.
Okay, well, clearly you listened to a lot of podcasts this year, so your list is very extensive. I actually have been trying to listen to fewer podcasts this year because I find that the ones I've been listening to, either I don't like them anymore or they're just annoying. But there were 2 new podcasts that I did listen to this past year. They're just like, they're not ongoing things. They were like limited series, if you will.
Yeah.
And I like them because of the story that it's true. It's not just a made up thing. Like, this actually happened. So one of them is called The No Good, Terribly Kind, Wonderful Lives and Tragic Deaths of Barry and Honey Sherman. No relation to you.
I listened to that. I listened to that podcast.
Yeah. So it was interesting because they still don't know how these 2 people died. And the fact that no one knows anything about this is mind-boggling to me. Like, how did these 2 people get killed? And no one left any trace of it. It's all very mysterious to me. And, this podcast does ask a lot of good questions. And I learned a lot just from listening to it. But there's still a lot of unanswered questions. So that was a good podcast. The other good podcast I listened to, only 4 episodes. It's called The Kids of Rutherford County. Have you heard of this one?
I think I might have listened to it. Remind me what it is.
So this is for over a decade. One Tennessee county arrested and illegally jailed hundreds, if not thousands, of children.
Oh, yeah. I listened to this. This is put on by Serial, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So the fact that this was allowed to go on for decades, I think, over a decade, and no one stopped it from happening or no one said anything until these 2, no-name lawyers decided to take on the county. Like, I can't believe this happened and no one even batted an eye.
Yeah, they just go about it as if this is normal life, right? This is our life.
Right. So anyway, so that was an interesting podcast as well because I knew nothing about this story. So
yeah, that was good. That was good, actually.
Those were the 2 podcasts that I listened to this year that I liked. Okay, we'll be right back after this with some final thoughts.
You're listening to Unscripted.
Do you know John Hyatt songs?
Maybe you know them from being covered by Roseanne Cash, Three Dog Night, the Neville Brothers, Emmylou Harris, Eric Clapton, B.B. King, Jeff Healey, Bonnie Raitt, or literally hundreds of others.
Maybe you have some of his albums on your shelf or in your cow-horned Cadillac right now.
I'm Jesse Jackson.
And I'm Sylvan Groff.
And we're going to dive in from A to Z. Join us on the Perfectly Good podcast.
We're going to discuss all of your favorites and uncover some forgotten gems, from Aces Up Your Sleeve to Zero House.
Rate and debate every John Hyatt song on the Perfectly Good podcast. Have a little faith.
Unscripted with Skip and Josh is available wherever you listen to podcasts. If you listen to the show through Apple Podcasts, please leave a review. To interact with the show, send an email to skipandjoshshow@gmail.com. Follow the show on Twitter and go to Facebook to like the show page. And now, some final thoughts from the guys.
I only have one final thought for the end of this episode, something that I wanted to talk to you about for the last week.
Okay.
There's 700 million reasons why I want to talk about it. So what do you think about the Shohei Ohtani contract, if you want to call it a contract, because details are coming out about how basically he's hardly getting paid anything until the end, where he's going to get all of it.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a lot of money, and it is a lot of money. It's an insane amount of money. Even if he's not getting most of it until 10 years from now, it's still an insane amount of money. Basically, he's going to be getting a huge check every year on July 1st, a la Bobby Bonilla, although Bonilla is not getting as much as Shohei will. Like, to be honest, I mean, sure, any team would want this guy on their team, but it kind of bothers me. Actually, it bothers me because, first of all, this week is another example of why I'm happy that Montreal doesn't have a baseball team. Because if we did, even though I don't live in Montreal, I say we would never be able to compete with the Dodgers or the Yankees or any of these teams that spend insane amounts of money. So, like, there's no point. Like, I don't understand why teams like Tampa or Oakland or I can list off a dozen teams that have no chance of winning the World Series. So that's one reason it bothers me. Another reason is, like, he might never pitch again. I know that the surgery is successful for most people, but, like, if he's just a hitter, and especially if he's just a DH, you just paid $700 million for a DH. Really? I mean, listen, the Dodgers, they already have a stacked roster. They were probably going to make the playoffs anyway. They were probably already one of the teams favored to win the World Series anyway. Now they just added him and Tyler Glasnow. So, I mean, go ahead. What do you think of the whole thing?
Well, I mean, I think that the amount of money is obscene. I don't know where they came up with $700 million. It's like, are they bidding against themselves? Like they're like, 500 million would have been fine, I think, or 600, and then, like, where would they just, like, roll a dice and come up with 700? Like, it seems crazy. And you're right. He look, 700 million is never going to be a normal amount of money no matter what you do. Like, you forget about reality here. But, like, if he's just a hitter, then no, of course it's not worth it. If he could pitch again, then I could understand why the number is so huge, right? Because we're talking about, like, one of the top 5 hitters in baseball and maybe one of the top 15 pitchers, right? So, like, okay, got it. He's like 2 players, so you know, 35 million and 35 million. I mean, even though the numbers are crazy, but it's so much. And then when you read about how much he's actually making, like, he's gonna make $2 million a year for the first 10 years, and then they're gonna give him the money after. Like, it's just so, like.
I mean, I know it was explained to me that, $700 million today is not as much as $700 million 10 years from now.
Yeah.
But still, it's still a boatload of money. So,
of course.
So when the Dodgers are paying him 10 years from now, will they not be able to have a roster of 25 players because they're busy paying this guy who's retired? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know either. Like, honestly, and 10 years is a freaking lot. He's not, like,
he's 29 years old. He's not exactly young.
Like, he won't be pitching when he's 39. He won't.
It's interesting.
He might be hitting.
They've done studies on professional athletes, and most athletes have their best year, their best season when they are 27 years old. And after that, they start to decline. He's already 29.
Yeah, I know. I mean, there's so many reasons to hate the Dodgers. Like, so many people already hate the Dodgers. And just add this to the fire now. I mean, like, it's just, like, forget about it, I'm not going to. And then the problem is, like, okay, so the Dodgers have won the NL West, like, what, 10 out of the last 12 years, something like this. Right?
Something crazy like that, yeah.
But they've only won the World Series the one time, and that was in the 2020 COVID season, so there's already a little, like, asterisk on that, So the Dodgers' chance of failure this year, is huge because there's only one measure of success, and that's winning the World Series. So if they don't win the World Series, it is a failure, right? Absolute failure. So good luck to them.
How many World Series do they have to win in the next 10 years for this contract to be worth it? Is one enough?
That's a great question. I mean, I think maybe one, but, like, even one is not enough. It's like, but 5 is unrealistic because no team is going to win 5.
No, they're not going to win 5.
There's no team in our life that wins 5 World Series in 10 years.
I don't even think they're going to win 3.
Yeah, I don't think they're going to win any. In a short series, someone's going to beat them. Like, that's all there is to it.
I mean, they do have a stacked roster.
Heard the stats this week. It's only, like, two teams in history. So like there's a stat which is like I don't know if it's WAR or if it's another variation of WAR, whatever. I don't know, but the stat is like there's only been two other teams in history that have three players of this caliber on their team. So the Dodgers now have Freeman, Betts, and Ohtani, who all have this WAR plus 60, which means they're like 60% better than any other player. And there's only two other teams in history that have ever had three players with this stat. And one is the 27 Yankees. and another one is like the 60-something Giants with Willie Mays, McCovey, and Orlando Cepeda. Like, that's it. Those are the only two other teams in history that have had players, like three players on their team this good, right? So, I mean, good luck to the Dodgers. I mean, good luck to them. You know, like, I'm not going to be cheering for them. I'm certainly not going to be cheering for them.
I want to tell you something weird that happened to me this week. It doesn't quite match up to when you found an old newspaper in your ceiling.
Right. Okay.
But it's weird. And you're not even going to think it's weird, but it's weird. To me, it's weird. So you ever put on your jacket or your coat and you put your hand in your pocket and you find something in there that you weren't expecting to find?
Yeah, like a $20 bill, or usually like a parking stub, or
so that doesn't happen.
Like...
That doesn't happen to me.
Okay.
Because I come home, I always empty my pockets right away. But I put on my coat the other day to go outside to go to work. I put my hand in my pocket, and by the way, I keep my gloves in my pockets so I know where my gloves are. One of my pockets, I felt like. I didn't know what it was, but it felt like sand in my pocket. And not just like a little bit of sand, like a lot of sand. And I didn't know what it was. So I try to take out as much as I could take out with my hand. And I look at my hand and it's really fine grains. And like they're stuck between my fingernails. And it was like dark brown, almost black. So I don't even think it was sand. I still to this day do not know what it was. And I couldn't get it out because it's not one of those pockets that you can turn inside out. Like, so I couldn't get it out. And I'm trying to remember, like, I didn't lend this coat to anybody. I didn't leave it at coat check anywhere. I remember the last time I wore it and it was like, I was at a restaurant, but it was next to me the entire time. So like, how could this have happened? What is it? It's not like I put a cookie in my pocket and it crumbled, because I don't put cookies in my pocket.
I don't want to tell you what my theory is because you're not going to like it.
I want to hear your theory, but let me just tell you, I couldn't get this stuff out. Like I ended up taking like a damp paper towel, sticking it in there, and it just more and more of this substance kept coming out. Eventually, I had to take my vacuum cleaner, stick it into the pocket, and that was the only way I was able to get it out. And it only happened in one pocket, not the other.
So this is the first time you wore this coat this winter, right? It's been like in your closet for months now.
No,
right?
Actually, it wasn't the first time. I'm glad you mentioned that, because like I thought, okay, maybe it's been sitting in there for a while and like some kind of insect or bug flew in there and died and then crumbled into a million pieces. But I had just worn it. I just worn it a week earlier.
Super weird. So like my only theory is that it's some kind of animal. Like and I don't even want to tell you like to gross you out, but it's like animal droppings. That's what that substance is, or like insect droppings. Just not to be too graphic and gross, but I think that's probably what it is.
You could be right. And so that means that there's some kind of animal that was in or might still be in my apartment.
Yeah, or an insect, which is harder to find, right? I guess like yeah.
But we don't have mice or rats in this building.
No. No.
So yeah, I don't know what it was, and it is very gross, and it's very mind-boggling to me. It's going to bother me forever. Like part of me wanted to like open the vacuum cleaner, take out a sample, and try to find out what it is.
I'm actually surprised you didn't just throw out the coat.
It wasn't wet though. It was dry, so it didn't like leave any kind of stain.
No, but just
anything.
the grossness of it. Like I thought maybe like that's it. I'm done with the coat. I need a new coat now.
You know what? Maybe I will do that.
Yeah, maybe you will do that. Well, I mean that's what listener mail's for, right? Because the power of the podcast, and I'm sure we'll hear some people's theories about this sandy substance in Josh's coat pocket. It was a pleasure talking to you this morning about our favorite pop culture entertainment, categories this year. It was a great year for TV and movies, so it was easy to talk about. Loved it. And I look forward to talking about our sports awards next week. So
yes,
I'll leave it there.
Part 2 next week. And until then, have a great week.